It's the most wonderful time of the year. That is, if you like races at 3/4 and 1.70 miles, grooming and working on the inner track here at the Big A. That will open for business this coming Wednesday with the regular first post at 12:20. We are off and running on our latest edition of the National Racing Report. It is Richard Migliore, Jason Blewett alongside Andy Serling. We hope he had an umbrella with him Saturday. He's down at Gulfstream Park. But you and I, a lot to talk about, a baker's dozen as far as the races.
Yeah, a lot of really good races, and interesting that we're going to go to South Florida for the opening of the premier Gulfstream meet. They've been running a lot more dates there. But the weather was better at Aqueduct than it was in South Florida.
And we ran more turf races Saturday at the Big A than they did Saturday opening day down at Gulfstream Park. And we hope Mother Nature continues on with us at least through the Christmas break, which is approaching rapidly here. But without further ado, we'll make that final stop, by the way, with the Grade 1 Matriarch from closing Sunday at Del Mar. But anyway, we'll make a few stops around the country, and we begin right at home with Saturday's featured Garland of Roses. Now, Mig, in years past, at least over the last decade or so, this has been the traditional opening stakes on the inner, not so with the mild autumn that we had.
No, it's, and you know, like you said, it's kind of the way the weather's gone, and we on the main track and starting the inner track actually late this year. I think December 9th's opening day of the inner track. So, but Room for Me, she has been good the entire year, and speaking with David Jacobson, he claimed her out at Santa Anita with the claiming crown races we had here in last winter in mind, and certainly she's far exceeded their expectations.
And picked her up for relative pennies. I mean, it's not like he jumped in and took her out of a $75,000 claiming race at Santa Anita. Picked her up at the bottom for $12,500 or close to the bottom out there. And she has banked over $320,000 in 2015 alone. And unlike the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, she got the trip that she wants. She was off much more cleanly than she was over at Keeneland. And she wants to be up close, kind of in that first flight, ready to roll.
Yeah, she got off cleanly, which she didn't in the Breeders' Cup. She worked out a great trip under Irad Ortiz. Princess Violet had a little trouble around the turn, had to take up to get back to the inside and follow her. All that being said, still second best. Room for Me is just very, very good, and this was a very fast race.
Very fast race beneath Irad Ortiz, who's picked up quite a bit of recent business for David Jacobson, who seems to have branched out, and he's using Irad Ortiz more than he had in past seasons here at the Big A. And just like that, kind of a quirky little nugget, but Harlington, who was a Eugene Melnick horse, trained by Todd Pletcher during his racing days, and ultimately wasn't a superstar, by Unbridled, out of Serena Song. I mean, he really had a world-class pedigree. He's thrown a couple pretty good Philly sprinters of late, in Wavell Avenue, who won the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, and he is the sire of Room for Me.
And, you know, it's interesting. Sometimes you'll feel like a horse is a flop, and then they always have a couple of horses that make you kind of rethink that position. Although, all in all, I think that's the cream of his crop, no doubt. And, you know, you brought up that David Jacobson took Room for Me for, you know, 12-5 out in California. I've always said the claimers that are consistent and hard-hitting out there are tough horses. Their maiden claimers aren't any good. The maiden 25s there, you see them all the time. They'll ship to Parks or other places and be big favorites and fail. The ones that win races in California consistently are good, rugged horses.
All right, that's a good nugget to keep in mind going forward if Roddy Valente or even David Jacobson is sending a small string of about a dozen horses out to Santa Anita, and I would imagine he'll be claiming out there. Nobody claims more than David, and we'll be running into those horses certainly in the spring, if not sooner. Let's move it ahead, and we'll really focus in on the Fillies and Mares, at least in this opening segment, as we had Room for Me as a galloping winner in the Garland of Roses, and we have got the pride of Maryland in Lady Sibylla, who put on just another tour de force performance as an overwhelming favorite who paid $2.40. She is just some good racehorse.
Yeah, she's got those Fillies and Mares down there over a barrel. She's just that much better than them. I'm glad we showed the Garland of Roses and this Willa on the Move back-to-back, because don't you think at some point this winter, probably in the Barbara Fritchie, this is going to be the matchup you're going to see, Room for Me versus Lady Sibylla, and Room for Me is going to have to go into her house to take her on. Should be pretty interesting. Horatio Caramanos rides this mare with so much confidence. He just leaves the gate with that long hold, kind of knows she's going to take him into the race the right way. She's better when she gets outside, and you're going to see when she turns for home, Jason, she's got that blinkered cup on the outside to protect her eye.
oh, is it to protect her eye? It's not anything as far as her being a previous bad actor. It's a case of them just protecting her eye.
Last winter, I thought it was an extension blinker because she tried to get out.
Right.
I was wrong. I actually got to speak to Connections several months back, and to know she's had a problem with that eye, and they do it to protect that eye from any kickback that she may get. But I still think she's better when she gets out in the clear.
No question. 7 stakes victories now at Laurel. She's got 10 lifetime wins from only 18 career starts and slowly creeping up to the $750,000 mark in earnings. And it's just nice seeing kind of a homegrown, even though she's a Kentucky bred, she really is a Maryland-based horse. And it's nice seeing sort of, you know, not your quote-unquote, you know, designer connections, getting a really good racehorse who certainly has staked her claim, at least going forward in 2016, at potentially being one of the best mare sprinters, filly mare sprinters in the entire country.
And her consistency is just what makes you really gravitate to her. She shows up every single time, and you know, people can be in this game for a lifetime and never own a horse as good and as consistent as this. She must be fun to own.
Yeah, Robin Graham, the winning trainer, and you kind of get some flashbacks of Dance to Bristol, who was based in Maryland, did some big things up here, if I'm not mistaken, won the Ballerina and the Honorable Miss at Saratoga.
Very good comparison.
All right, if you like slop, we are heading to South Florida, a rainy, rough opening Saturday card. We have got plenty of soupy slop coming your way in the Claiming Crown on the other side of this quick break. It wouldn't be December at the Big A without our annual stocking stuffer sale. We'll have it for you this weekend, Saturday, December 12th, Sunday, December 13th. Whole bunch of goodies to choose from, those premium giveaways throughout the entire year, and maybe a Tom Durkin bobblehead waiting for you here this weekend. It is also Toys for Tots. It's always a pleasure and a great honor to have the United States Marine Corps with us on hand, and this is the season of giving, Mig. I think you say it best, and please bring a new unwrapped toy for a child less fortunate than you.
Yeah, you know, you give the Marines so much credit. They give so selflessly, these men and women, and they really take the time to make a difference in other people's lives. And you have an opportunity to make a difference in some young kid's life. And you know, they say the measure of a person is how they make the people around them feel. Well, you have an opportunity to make some young people feel pretty good.
Like that very much as we send it down to Gulfstream Park. Bring an umbrella, bring some boots, because there was a lot of slop to go around. And unfortunately, Mother Nature, we had nicer weather. Unfortunately for Gulfstream, we ran more turf races and had nicer weather than they did down at Gulfstream when compared to the Saturday Aqueduct card. But let's get to the far turn run with Royal Posse, who is a New York bred who has ascended to new heights for Michael Dove and Rudy Rodriguez.
Yeah, a $20,000 claim, just picked up $110,000. Just a terrific run here. And I got to be honest, I thought for a long time Royal Posse was a horse that had a little bit of hang in him, maybe, you know, ran more seconds than wins. Well, he's changing my mind because he's starting to finish the deal. Really a dominant winner here. And, you know, we talk about Michael Dove and all his success claiming. That's because he claims with a plan. And when you have an outlet like a race like this, a claiming crown for horses, I think it's appropriate because these are the horses day in, day out that provide us with so much pleasure, and they're the heart and soul of our industry.
They're the horses I really, in this day and age, get attached to. It's not like it was even 20 years ago when I cut my teeth in the game. This isn't a statement of, you know, nostalgic rose-colored glasses. It seemed like even Cigar, Holy Bull, they had, you know, extensive and complete campaigns. Now the top horses, for the most part, only run a handful of times where, you know, these horses, we get to enjoy and watch them what they were bred to do. Watch them perform and compete 10, 12, 13, 15 times a year.
Well, and the fact that they run that many times is what gives people an opportunity to latch onto them. They create a fan base because you start anticipating them running back. For me as a kid, many, many years ago, it was Forgo. I would start looking in the newspaper in May because I knew Forgo was going to show up in an allowance race. And again, having the ability to see these horses run more than that handful of times.
And a 1-2 finish in that stake for Rudy Rodriguez, who was second best with Mr. Palmer. Nice little Rudy exacta. 4 wins, by the way, Saturday down at Gulfstream for Javier Castellano. More on him in a few moments. Let's move on to the off-the-turf Claiming Crown Emerald. I did feel a little bad for Gulfstream. They just couldn't get any grass races in as it continued to pour, but they had numbers in this one. 13 went to the post, and we had a near 10-to-1 upset with Key to Power, who beat Roman Approval and Ghost Hunter.
Yeah, Key to Power. Corey Lannery had a tough summer. Saratoga struggled a bit. but you know he can ride. And unfortunately, Ghost Hunter was probably the best horse. You're going to see him finishing best of all on the rail. He was stymied not once, not twice, not 3 times, but several times throughout the course of the race. And sometimes you just get bad racing luck.
6-year-old son of AP Indy, bred by the Y Gods and picked up for $35,000 at Gulfstream Park via the claim box in late February. He is trained by Brendan Walsh, who had a small string at Saratoga this past summer. And if you're not familiar with him, he is another graduate of the esteemed Darley Flying Start program.
Well, you know, just to get in that program, you got to be a pretty sharp cookie. And then to graduate the program, you got to be even sharper. So you know they're well prepared. And do you remember this horse's mother, Exotic Wood?
I do remember Exotic Wood, based
good
out on
mare.
the West Coast. I can't remember who trained her out there.
You know, I think Ron Ellis actually trained her.
I feel like
she might have shipped in
New York.
and won the Genuine Risk with Chris McCarron one day.
Very good sprinting filly, and the Y Gods, of course, have a, just top-class breeding and racing operation, even though they lost this one via the claim box. Let's move on to the Claiming Crown Express. We will check out winning rider Jorge Vargas Jr., trainer Marcus Zuleta, and a Texas bred taking his show on the road and getting it done down at Gulfstream on Saturday.
And once again, accentuating that a good horse can come from anywhere, right? I thought speed was pretty good all day, and this kind of blew that theory out of the water. This horse came from way back, although a pretty hot pace to set up a late run. And we've seen several people do good with these kind of horses that basically come from nowhere. And George Vargas is a rider that I've actually liked for a long time.
Do you? I noticed, actually, it's funny you say that, because when I was getting prepared for the show, there was a picture on DRF.com that was attached to the post-race story, and I said, whoever that rider is, it was just coming down to the wire in a crazy tight finish, and I said, man, that rider looks really neat and just perfectly placed in the saddle.
And he really did. His balance, his athleticism was all on display. He looked terrific. And you know, you think about big purses and guys that don't get to ride for big purses very often. There's a tendency to get excited and maybe override. Well, he didn't. He acted like he'd been there and done that, and it paid off.
Good. Gelding by Swab, bred in Texas. Swab, of course, decade and a half ago, 20 years ago, pretty good 3-year-old for Nick Zito as we keep it going and get on to the Claiming Crown Canterbury Stakes, in which Florida-based rider Juan Leyva got this off the turf for Aubrey Mirage.
Yeah, and a successful appeal, a horse that I was very familiar with, who hated the mud.
That's funny, because he's been such a good wet track sire.
He hated the mud. I got beat on him one day. I didn't think he could lose. He just couldn't stand up in it. But you know what they say? Mrs. Mays had 9 children. Right. She only had 1 Willie.
It's amazing.
Pedigree can only carry you so far.
And he's a valid appeal, successful appeal. You figured he would eat the slop up. But anyway, the horse certainly sired by successful appeal, rolled home there beneath Juan Leyva. And it's a case where a number of these horses that won races at Gulfstream Park on Saturday, that they were claimed. It's not that they started and won Saturday with their original outfit. A few people have made some pretty shrewd claims, and this horse picked up for 25 G's has now earned well over 100,000.
Well, and again, you know, having this outlet makes it more attractive for people to jump in and claim. We've seen a lot of claiming in New York without, you know, that incentive. You know, because this is something that obviously, well, I guess we're going to have another one this winter.
Yeah.
So you know you have an out or a potential big payday down the line. And talk about Juan Leyva. Here's a guy who won a Breeders' Cup a few years ago.
Who was the horse?
Musical something.
You got it. You get full credit. Musical Romance.
Okay.
And she was good, man. Oh, she was a good sprinter.
Good. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the our next race. It was run as the 7th on Saturday down at Gulfstream Park. This is the Claiming Crown Glass Slipper, and this was one of Javier Castellano's 4 wins on the afternoon. He's got the lime green silks of Luch Racing, who won a couple of races, and Peter Walder. This is his current stomping ground, and he puts up some big numbers at Gulfstream. Peter
Walder's always done a good job. His horses always look great, and they always perform. And you could see Javier Castellano turned for home like he was in a morning workout. He was basically allowing the horse on the lead, My House, to lead him a little bit longer before he finally asked Moonshine Promise to run. And she just absolutely loved the going. As of the time we taped this show early Sunday morning, Javier Castellano, #1 in the country with 319 victories, and #1 by about $5 million in purse money won
at $27.5 million.
And I think he's got a big shot to get over that $28 million mark. I mean, it's remarkable how much the earning potential now, I should say.
Yeah.
And I know that Victor Espinosa is going to get a lot of support for the Eclipse Award, but I genuinely believe Javier Castellano deserves it. He earned it. And if you go back for the last 3 Triple Crown winners, Ron Turcotte did not win the Eclipse Award when Secretariat won it. Steve Cawthon didn't win it when Affirm won it, and John Crugay didn't win it when Seattle Sioux won it. So there is precedence. It doesn't mean automatically because you wrote a Triple Crown winner you get the Eclipse Award.
All right, good point there. And day in and day out, I don't think anybody's been more consistent than Javier Castellano, riding in the big leagues and just shipping all over for stakes opportunities and getting those stakes wins. Let's, unlike the last few races we've talked about and looked at down at Gulfstream, we'll do the entire rapid transit, and for good reason. I mean, this was a hard-hitting group of tough sprinters, and a race you and I, at least with the stretch run, recapped on Saturday's Aqueduct Insider, because we're just big fans, and they're good horses of the first 2, Stalwalking Dude and Trouble Kid.
And Trouble Kid had every opportunity to beat Stalwalking Dude. It looked like at one point he might have had him put away. Now, you remember Trouble Kid was disqualified in the DeFrancis Dash, ran a big race that day. Stalwalking Dude is a street fighter. You do not want to hook this horse in a head-and-head duel because he's going to come back and beat you. We've seen him do it several times. And you're going to watch in the stretch, Jason, Stalwalking Dude's a little late jumping to his right lead. And when that other horse got a neck on him and couldn't completely put him away, I said, when he changes leads, he's coming back. And sure enough, here he came.
And this goes back to David Jacobson. And David claims a lot, spends a lot, and not all the claims, in fact, quite a few, don't work out, and they wind up in a short time dropping below what they were claimed for. There's been a few exceptions, and major exceptions, and this horse I don't think was claimed by David, but a private purchase. And you look, this was start number 17 on the year for David, 7 wins, and he's banked about $600,000 in the process.
Well, all you need is 1 or 2 like that to make up for the ones that don't work out. And David's very smart at minimizing the losses and dropping horses where they can win, and then they get claimed, and you recoup some of your money. But Stalwalking Dude, and I talk about it a lot, I like horses that can take a punch. There's a lot of horses that are brilliant and they've got a great deal of ability, but man, when they get grabbed by the throat latch the way this horse, and Trouble Kid's a good horse, they'll wilt, or they'll cave into the other horse's will. They'll allow them to impose their will on them. Not Stalwalking Dude. He just almost gets emboldened by challenges. This is my kind of horse.
My kind of horse as well, and perhaps we'll see him up at the Big A, much like the Fillies and Mares, where we have the Interborough, and then maybe that President's Day weekend stop down in the Barbara Fritchie, followed by the Correction in mid-March. We've got a fairly extensive program, at least a race every 4 to 6 weeks for the sprinters throughout the winter on the inner track.
Yeah, and just like you said, to go with the Barbara Fritchies, there's the General George down there, but we do have a very comprehensive group of races for both sets of sprinters, female and male.
Heck of a 1-2 punch with Salute Those Amigos in the barn, and Dave Grenning reporting just a few days ago. That's one of the dozen or so horses going out to the West Coast with David's new string at Santa Anita. Let's finish things off at Gulfstream Park. This is race number 9 on the show. It was run as the 5th, midway through the program on Claiming Crown Day, and this is the Distaff Dash, in which we have Edgar Zayas, the winning rider, for trainer Alfred McIntosh, aboard a horse by Eurosilver. Got the money in here, Silver Sachet, the number 6.
You know, for a race that came off the turf, it was a really good race and a fast race. You know, so you had horses here that stayed in spite of the surface switch and delivered big performances. And Sunrise Kitty, you know, really rallying down the center of the track with Edgar Prado, who, we really haven't had an opportunity to talk about it, has kind of had a reemergence as the rider that we knew at one time.
Yeah, I think maybe taking a step back and dropping out of New York, for lack of a better term, and spending most of the summer down at Gulfstream Park, maybe just gave him a chance to kind of get some confidence back and work on his game. And it's worked out because he picked up the mount on Run Happy, and of course he just rode a good race and hitting the board Saturday.
You know, it's interesting. There's only so many opportunities to go around in New York. There's so many good riders. And if you're not getting the cream of the crop and you're riding horses that you need a lot of things to go right to win, you do lose your confidence. And I think getting in a place where he's riding consistently horses with chances has kind of reinvigorated him.
All right, Edgar Prado, great Hall of Famer. He has won thousands and thousands, much like the man sitting next to me. In fact, we'll have the MIG in our final segment. Stick around as well. It's all about the 2-year-olds as we head down to Laurel, and of course the Grade 1 Matriarch as we wrap up the show. That's right. The show hasn't changed since we last saw you. It is the National Racing Report on MSG Plus. About to wrap things up. Jason and the MIG from our Aqueduct second floor clubhouse studios. The inner track is upon us this coming Wednesday with the 9-race card. And we saw a number of horses run here on Saturday, specifically soon-to-be 3-year-olds in the 5th race that might be sticking around this winter. And 2 of them, mainly the 2 horses that put on a good show down to the wire, they could be okay.
I think they came out of, the winner came out of a very strong maiden race. And, of course, the runner-up is dropping out of stakes races.
Yeah.
And, you know, my original thought when I watched this race was that King Kriza, is I'm saying it properly?
King Krantz.
King Krantz. King Kriza is the turf horse.
Yes.
Excuse me. King Krantz hung. And when I went back and watched it several times, I think Condo King outran him. I think he tried. I think he got to him. And he wasn't leaning on him. He was giving 110%. Condo King just ran lights out.
And this was a huge forward move in this race for Condo King, who had finished second middle of May behind Uncle Vinny, who was an overwhelming favorite, and sort of just an average early season maiden special weight race at Belmont Park. He was 3rd most recently to Vorticity, going 7/8 on November 8th with a 69 buyer, and this was the race that really made him a man, because not only did he just buy inside every step of the way, he had to deal with a solid horse in King Krantz, who's faced some serious firepower up to this point.
Absolutely. He's got a little more foundation, and you think right here, well, King Krantz has got him, but Condo King, under a very, very energetic and strong ride by Angel Arroyo, keeps finding, and I just think he's coming out of a race that, and we're going to talk about Vorticity, the winner, in a few moments. He won a stake in Maryland over the weekend. The 4th place finisher out of the race came back and broke his maiden at Gulfstream impressively. I know that West Point Thoroughbreds was very high on their horse, who was 2nd in that race, so we'll look for him to come back. I really think that this is a good group of horses, and I'm going to give King Krantz a pass. I don't think he hung. I think he got outrun.
All right, we'll see him next, most likely on the inner for John Terranova. I would imagine the same could be said for Condo King as we get on to the Marylander, run Saturday down at Laurel, back-to-back races from Maryland to bring you on the show. And you have a lot to say. I know you're a fan of Vorticity, right?
Yeah, I think Vorticity had a very difficult trip here. He was, you know, used to try to hold position. A big long shot, a 20-to-1 shot. He's going to outrun him from the outside. And you can see right here his rider, Victor Carrasco, is trying to hold his position inside. And eventually he's going to have to kind of come back out of the spot. And then he's going to have to force his way out as another horse laps on him to the outside. Actually, the favorite will lap on him. This is a very, very difficult position for a 2-year-old to be in. He's not in a comfortable position. You've got that horse just outrunning you enough where, you know, your horse is a little intimidated, you're a little intimidated. Is he going to come all the way and take all my ground? And the fact that he was able to get out-footed here, come outside, and fight off the outside pressure shows me this is a horse, again, we talk about it, that's got tenacity, can take a punch.
And that was all basically as far as him getting outside and re-rallying on a turn, where, you know, you think about the torque and the fact that maybe he's a little off balance and all of his weight for the most part, or at least most of it, is shifted on that left lead in a very agile effort here out of Vorticity as Matthew Scherer, a fairly new owner at the high end of the game, the high level. He has got more horses than maybe any other owner I can think of, and I'm glad he's got a good one here, who is by Distorted Humor out of Tar Heel Mom, who, if I'm not mistaken, Stanley Huff trained her, Tar Heel Mom?
Good call.
Did you ride her?
Great, no, I never rode her. That's a
you
very good
remember
call.
her, though?
I do. I think Robbie Davis may have rode her, but I think he's got a pedigree that says he can go on. I like the fact that he was able to do what he did, and to me, subtly overcome adversity in this race. And you know that Trevor McCarthy on the favorite Never Gone South tried to get to him and to keep him stuffed in behind that horse, and the fact that he was agile enough and game enough to fight his way back out in between him. Vorticity is a horse I like going forward.
All right, got the 7. We'll see if he stretches out. We've got the Jerome, the Withers, the Gotham, Kentucky Derby points.
Yep.
2016 right around the corner. Good stuff there, Mig. Let's move on to our final race. In fact, this is race 12 on the show, the Gin Talking. And I would imagine with Catherine Sophia, the runaway winner for Cash is King and trainer John Service, their phone's probably ringing off the hook with potential very lucrative 7-figure offers for this filly.
I mean, this was a paid public workout. She basically just galloped around, earned $60,000, ran faster than the boys, as much as I like Vorticity. And we've seen some fillies that, you know, with huge performers. There's some filly running at Penn National right now that's winning like this all the time,
Oh,
getting
really?
major figures. this was, I mean, what can you say? Jaw-dropping. She won as easy as you could win, on her left lead, under wraps. Just a good filly.
13 lengths the good in her debut. Tipped out like a good thing down at Parks at 2-1. In fact, maybe in hindsight, she should have been 2-5 in that race.
Yeah.
Got a 92 buyer, winning a day before Halloween in her debut, and she's got 2 lappers to her credit. We'll see if they sell. I'm sure they are fielding some generous offers for Catherine Sophia, who is by Street Boss. We'll wrap up the show. Grade 1 company as we close things out. We'll backtrack to closing day at Del Mar last Sunday, November 29th. Backstretch run halfway through the Matriarch, which was not a cleanly run race. This was one heck of a ride by Kent DeSormo.
This was a great ride by Kent DeSormo. And a 14-horse field on a 7/8 turf course, you are going to have trips, and there's going to be a lot of traffic. And if you're handicapping, I think you have to go back and watch this race 14 times and watch each horse individually. But getting back to Kent DeSormo, I just find it funny. Kent seems to get himself into problems. The day before, a lot of criticism from Jeremy Nacita, the trainer from Europe. And a war of words ensued on Twitter, in media, and then here comes Kent, like basically, take that, silencing all his critics.
When he's got his head on straight, he is as good a rider in the country. I know he's not a young kid anymore, but as far as tactics are concerned and overall confidence, I mean, Kent DeSormo, and he proved it to be when he shipped to New York a few years ago and really found himself at Saratoga. I mean, this guy is a world-class jockey.
He can ride. I wish he was more consistent. The saddest thing in life is wasted talent, and one thing you can say, Kent DeSormo never lacked confidence.
Well, we also have Recepta running a big one quickly for Jimmy Toner. How about the job he's done with her?
Yeah, shame that she didn't get the money. She did everything right and just got beat.
Ed Moger Jr., by the way, the winning trainer of the upset winner, Stormy Lucy. She paid about $130 in that race. Guys won about 1,700 races. First ever Grade 1 for a career that began in 1976.
They're hard to win.
All right, Stocking Stuffer, Intertrack this Wednesday. We'll see you all weekend. Toys for Tots. And we are out of time on this latest edition of the National Racing Report. Thanks for joining us here at the Big A.